It is time for NASCAR Sprint Cup Series practice at Richmond International Raceway. Just 5 days after what may have been the most exciting NASCAR race of all time, we go to one of the most exciting NASCAR tracks of all time, where the weather is, in a word, perfect. And will be for the weekend. So welcome to Richmond, everybody. Mike Joy, Larry McReynolds, Darrell Waltrip with you once again. Still catching our breath from Talladega, but that's a good thing, because if you're going to follow up a race with a record number of leaders and a record number of lead changes, then let's come to the action track and take that 6.2 rating from Sunday and give those folks something just as exciting, but a little different flavor to it.
Well, my fingernails are almost grown out enough I can chew on them again tomorrow night. But, I was talking to Doug Fritz. He said he loved what we said about this racetrack. Richmond is the Talladega of short tracks.
Sure.
And that's what you're going to see here tomorrow night, folks. I don't know if it'll be 29 leaders and 88 lead changes or not, but it'll be a lot of action, I can promise you.
And before we get to that race tomorrow night, we got a busy day today. Our producer, Barry Landis, reminded us in our ear before we came on the air, pace yourself, boys. We got 3 hours of practice. Well, that's what this group in the garage area needs to do, because it's almost a mirror of Phoenix a few weeks ago. It's a track that's very similar. It's weather that's similar. It's the same tire. So I look for the guys that struggled at Phoenix. They're going to be searching here, but the guys that were pretty good, they should be pretty good here. And the biggest thing you don't want to do is just chase yourself, because you definitely can chase this racetrack in this kind of weather, because none of the practice will be in conditions that we're going to race in tomorrow night.
All right, so before Artie Kempner and our great Fox and Speed cameramen give you the great pictures of short track racing, we're going to the garage to catch up on a little, I don't know, Matt, unfinished business?
Well, Mike, for the second straight week, our superheroes were checking in on the Jimmie Johnson, Jeff Gordon saga. And for the second straight week, they had to have a conversation post-race about some on-track incidents. This week, though, owner Rick Hendrick got on the phone, had a conference call, stressed several things. Number one, feel free to voice your opinion. Number two, handle things on the racetrack as you see fit. But number three, whatever you do, don't let it carry over and start tearing apart the organization, because remember, the 24 and 48 teams are housed in the very same building. And you know what? What better place to come to smooth things over than a short track? Dick Bergeron?
I'm with you on that, Matty. This is Chesterfield, Virginia's Denny Hamlin's home racetrack. And why not? He's got a great feel for this place. He admits he does. He has led every cup race he has ever run at this place. And in the last 2 years, over 4 races, he has averaged leading more than half of the laps. One here last fall. He's got a car that has a winning heritage. It's been run 3 times, won them all.
Thanks, Dick. Home field advantage has Denny Hamlin's name all over it when we come to Richmond. In fact, Joe Gibbs Racing, the success they've had here with Kyle Busch sweeping both the nationwide and the cup races here last spring, and with what Hamlin's done, they're going to be more than a match for any of these other multi-car teams.
And I never feel like a track owes anybody a win, but when I look at that 11 car, of course, he won the September race here last year. But if I go back to our race here 2 years ago, Denny Hamlin led basically the first 381 laps of that race. And if you remember, cut that tire down late in the race. Yep. I definitely felt like this racetrack owed him a win. And
Mike, there's nothing like racing in your hometown, because it doesn't matter where you go or what you do. Nobody says, who is that guy? Everybody knows that's Denny Hamlin, and he's from Richmond, Virginia, and he likes that racetrack they're at this weekend.
The other big story is here at Hendrick Motorsports, the powerhouse team of NASCAR. There's a look at Jimmie Johnson moving down in front of a fast-closing Jeff Gordon. And then this that took Gordon from the race.
The 48 is testing my patience, I can tell you that. It takes a lot to make me mad, and I'm pissed right now.
That was Sunday. Since then, as Matt explained, the two have had a conversation, both between themselves and with car owner Rick Hendrick. And Jimmie Johnson immediately took responsibility for what happened on track, saying he moved down, misjudging the closing speed of Gordon when he took away Jeff's lane there.
All I would say is Jimmie Johnson did not do anything wrong. to block someone at Talladega or to try to, he sees these guys coming. He says, they're moving, I'm going with them. I'm going to get the push.
Right.
What he did wrong, though, was his teammate. You have to treat your teammate with a little bit more courtesy, give him a little bit more room, I think, in a situation like that particularly, than you would another competitor.
And if Jimmy's speed had been close to what Jeff's was, we wouldn't even be having this conversation.
But key words in that interview, the 48 car is testing my patience. That 48 car has been testing Jeff Gordon's patience for over 8 years now. 50 wins ago, which Jeff Gordon has not won a championship since that 48 car became in existence.
What does everybody do when the Yankees are winning? They look for dissension in the clubhouse. Sometimes they find it. Speed's presentation of NASCAR Sprint Cup practice from Richmond is brought to you by the Sponsify. Visit ToyotaRacing.com and click on Design It, enter it. And by Tornadoes. Bold is how we roll. Jamie Mack with the quickest lap of practice so far. And here's a look at Kurt Busch, who is 11th on the speed chart of the Blue Deuce. He's the quickest Dodge, McMurray the fastest Chevy, Logano the quickest Toyota, and Allmendinger the fastest Ford so far.
You know, 2 weeks in a row, some pretty big news about Kurt Busch. Of course, it was announced before Talladega he's going to be driving the number 22 Shell Pennzoil car in 2011 for Penske, and he just signed this week a 5-year contract extension with Roger Penske to drive there.
And some fans at home might say, well, why would he change numbers? Remember, he is a champion. So whatever car he gets in next year, he has pretty much assured himself of that car being in the race.
That's good, because the 2 will probably be the highest Penske car in the points at the end of the season.
Yep.
So jumping over there makes good business sense, as well as Miller Lite's continuing with that team. They have the Blue Deuce, and Shell wants to create their own identity, so it works for everybody.
But just remember, what Penske can do with NASCAR, the way it works, he actually can put those 2 points over there with the 22 car, and then he can put the 12 points with the 2. You can pretty much do what you want at the end of the year.
He can put the 2 points with the 77.
Which he has done before.
That's exactly right.
Enough numbers. Matt, help us out.
I'll help you out big time, Mike. And if your owner, Rick Hendrick, he helped himself out big time this past week by locking in not only Chad Canals to a long 5-year deal, but also Alan Gustafson, the crew chief currently on the 5 car. He's locked in for another 4 years. So both those crew chiefs, race-winning crew chiefs, are off the market. Now, Chad, of course, locked into the 48, but interesting, they didn't really give the long-term plans for Alan. And whether he will stay on the 5 car for the entire duration, that is still up in the air.
I think we still have a lot of unanswered questions. We're only a fourth of the way through 2009. Most of these questions are for 2010 for 2011 now.
But that's 2 big pieces of the puzzle to get locked down, because if either of those crew chiefs had hit the free market, there would have been a lot of interest and probably spirited bidding.
Just remember, when somebody that's that vital to an operation or that involved in everything, if they should leave, they don't just leave and leave everything behind. They take a lot of information with them.
It's what's between the headsets.
That's it.
That counts most. You bet. And there they are. 2 of the top Hendrick crew chiefs that are now going to continue to be long-termers at Hendrick Motorsports. Matt Kenseth, very quietly 4th in the standings. He's been in the top 5 all season. He is a contender, and we visited with Jack Roush last week as they continue to work with the Ford FR9 engine, and ran it at Talladega in all those cars. Had a hiccup or 2, but otherwise, you know, I think it was a pretty good day for them.
Yeah, the 17 just had a rough day at Talladega, and it all started with the fuel overflow. They couldn't get fuel in the car. They got behind. They lost the draft. They got a lap down, and it just seemed like it escalated from there.
Somebody in that group's got to break out and win a race.
Yes.
That's what that company needs, is somebody to get the victory circle. I think it'll lift everybody up.
Where was Greg Biffle last week? We saw fleeting glimpses of him in the top 5. And I'm sure he led the race, because everybody who was on the track did at one time or another. But it just wasn't the kind of, I'm going to get out front of this field performance at Talladega that we would anticipate from Greg Biffle.
No, really, the only Roush Fenway car when it was all said and done that even finished in the top 10 was David Reagan, and that 6 car finished 6th.
That's right. Dick Berggren?
With Clint Boyer, a past winner here at Richmond. What's the track like this morning?
Well, you know, it's pretty hot out already this morning, but it's just kind of hard to get a hold of a little bit. It's starting to, sounds like everybody's fighting tight in the middle and then a little bit loose off, which is kind of typical at Richmond. But if you can make your car roll through the middle, it usually helps up off because you can roll on around there and drive off straight. So BB&T Chevrolet so far so good. You know, I think we're second quick or something. So I'm happy with the speed. We just got to rotate the middle a little bit more.
And we're also hearing on the scanner a lot of people are struggling with tire chatter, particularly going into the corners, Mike.
Let's look at Boyer's teammate, Kevin Harvick, the Talladega winner.
I tell you, I hate it when them tires start chattering. You don't know what they're saying, you know, talking to each other like that.
But normally that's a product of just a very bad push. The car not turning, you go in there and the front wheels just chatter.
Have you ever seen a better timed move than this one?
No, but you know, I think we kind of went through that a number of times in practice, how drivers were falling back, see how far back they had to get or how close to the front they had to get to be able to make those kind of moves to be the first guy to get to the start finish line. I heard this cat right here say a dozen times. I practiced that all during our practice session.
We saw it. That's right.
You know, I talked to Kevin Harvick last night, and we were talking about that race, and he said, Larry, I have been racing for years, and he said, I have never went into a race with a game plan where we stuck with it and it absolutely worked out to a T. That was their plan all day long, to roll to the back. They led a lap early, got their 5 points, rolled to the back, stayed out of trouble, worked their way back up there, and made the pass at the right time.
All 3 of those cars with the Earnhardt Ganassi engines that figured in the finish. Harvick, McMurray, and Montoya were among the drifters. That half dozen cars that drifted to the back didn't race, and then when it was time, there they were.
Yeah, well, not only did they have the right track position, but they also made the right calls in the pits. They had not just thought about where they need to be on the racetrack. They thought about when to put on 4 tires. At what point do I want to put on 4 tires to set myself up to be in the position they were in at the end? So that's why it was a perfect plan. Every piece of that puzzle all fit together, made a pretty picture.
How about Jamie Mack? 3 restrictor plate races, 2 wins in a second. Wow. Matt?
And Mike, an update on the 29 of Kevin Harvick. After the first run, he and Gil Martin were talking back and forth. He adjusted with brake bias, dialing 2 rounds to the front. He also needed to work on the roll through the center. That's the area he really felt like they could improve on the most. They made some adjustments, came back in. Now he wants to work a little more on getting his 29 machine a little more rear grip.
Jamie Mack is at the top of the chart. He has the fastest lap so far in this practice. Tonight, as NASCAR trades paint in Richmond, the fans are revved up for the ultimate Friday night house party. Casey Kane and his new paint scheme stop by trackside tonight, 11 Eastern, only on Speed.
And you know, we were talking about David Reagan and that great run that he had at Talladega. He's going to come by and hang out with us for a couple of segments.
Casey Kane's going to be there, and the paint job you're talking about is a retro look back to 1985 in honor of the championship that we won up there with Junior Johnson and Jeff and all of us. Big Bud on the hood, and Big Bud's going to be on stage with us tonight. I had to loan him one of my old uniforms. He couldn't. He needed a uniform, so I loaned him one of mine.
And you know what else is significant about that paint scheme in 1985? Besides the championship? Come on, DW. You won here, the September race.
Oh, here, yeah. Well, there were so many things, Larry. I was cycling through, yeah. No, you know, that was a fun year because that was, I tell you, when I look at the chase, I kind of wish they'd have had the chase 30 years ago. Because if you look at how we raced, always the last 10 races when we did the most damage. That's when we'd catch up, come from far behind. Bill Elliott had a huge point lead in 85. We were able to overcome it and win with that Bud car. And it's kind of fitting, too, Mike, that Junior Johnson going to Hall of Fame here in a few weeks.
Right.
And that's certainly Junior's car and what he contributed to the sport and to my success. So it's kind of a tribute to him, too.
Brian Vickers has been in free fall. As you see the graphic, the last 3 races, he has dropped from 12th to 25th. in the standings.
You know, just a second ago, we saw Tony Stewart. Tony, in the last 5 races in that 14 car, he's dropped 9 spots in the points. He's back to 14th now.
Comers and goers.
And you know, you say, well, it's still early. We're 1/4 of the way through 2010, but we're also 1/3 of the way, a little better than 1/3 of the way through those first 26 races.
I think you look at the tracks like Tony Stewart, I'm sure, okay, so he's back to 14th now. He's probably licking his chops because he's coming to one of his best racetracks. So you know, have a bad race, okay, what are we going to do about it? We're going to go to Richmond, or we're going to go to my next favorite racetrack and make all that back up.
Jeff Burton was certainly one of those who ran up front last Sunday, but he got caught up in one of the multi car pileups and ended up without having a great day. Dick?
Yeah, and that was all about a pit stop he didn't want to make, Mike. Turned out Burton had a piece of windshield tear off on the grill area in front of the car. The engine was overheating. They had wanted to stay out at the end, but had to pull that thing off or they would have lost the motor. Here, the chassis just does not suit him at all. He says the car is slow through turns 1 and 2. He's lost rear grip in it. He's shattering the tires, so they have changed both of the rear springs in the car and also adjusted the wedge. Last spring, Burton finished 3rd here at Richmond, so he's a good one.
You know what I like about Jeff Burton? I was listening to him in the media center down over there with Casey. You know, they'll ask Burton a question, and there's conventional answers to every question. You know, you always kind of got an answer for whatever they're going to ask you. He always has a different perspective. You know, the answer might be obvious, but he'll say, but have you ever thought about this?
Absolutely.
Have you ever looked at it this way?
I ran into that firsthand with him. I had a classic car I was selling, and he had an interest. And I expected the question to be, why are you selling it? And I was all prepared. You know, I said, yeah, we got it for sale. We've had it for about 6 months, done some things too. So, and now it's for sale. He goes, why'd you buy it? I didn't have a ready answer for that. The answer ended up being so I could sell it to somebody and make some money.
There you go, yeah.
But
yeah,
I don't know. But you're right. He does. He thinks outside the box. And
he does. But it's not to be confrontational.
No,
it's
not at all.
It's one of those things when he asks you a question like, gosh, I never thought about that.
Joey Logano currently 3rd. He is the quickest Toyota. Kyle Busch is 5th.
You know, his teammate Kyle Busch was running right out in front of him. You just mentioned him, Mike. He's 5th quickest. I look for this team to have a good race here. They won this race a year ago, but more importantly, I talked about the relationship of this racetrack to the Phoenix track. Just remember, he had that race won until that caution came out late in the race and things got jumbled up on the pit stop. I mean, he was gone.
Larry, this is one of those racetracks, too, that'll make your tongue hang out. Now, you race here tonight in the nationwide race, and it's going to be hot. It's up in the 80s, and it's supposed to be something like 90 tomorrow. Pretty hot here tomorrow night. This place right here is, you're in a turn all the time. From the time you enter come out of turn 3 and 4 over here, all the way down to turn 1, you're turning.
And you don't get that many cautions normally in that 400-lap race to get a little bit of a breather or a break.
Got a little bit of short back straightaway to kind of get your breath, and that's it, bud. And the rest of the time, you're experiencing a few G's here.
Mike Bliss in the James Finch car, which we're told Finch's whole operation is for sale. We'll check further on that. Darrell, take us for a ride with Juan Pablo.
That shot makes me dizzy, I'm telling you. But that's what a driver sees right there. I mean, he sees those cars up ahead of him, but his focus is right there going down the back. Got to get into 3 right here on that yellow line. Try to stay as low as you can and then hook it off the 4 right there so you got enough room to kind of drift out right there to the start-finish line. But that really is a view that a driver has as he's driving his race car. Right there, what's off the hood, especially when you're trying to make the perfect lap. You see those cats up there. That's why you got a spotter to tell you if there's anything ahead of you that's going to cause you a problem.
You heard the RPMs jump up off of turn 2. What's that feel like in the car?
Well, that's wheel spin, and you come off of turn 2, or even turn 4 here as well. You got quite a bit of steering into it. You turn the wheels pretty hard left. As that car starts to pick up speed, the front wheels grip. That makes the rear wheels kind of want to jump up in the air and spin.
Montoya 18th on the board. Jamie Mack, Clint Boyer, and Joey Logano continue to pace practice. Tonight on Speed, the incredible story of NASCAR Hall of Famer Junior Johnson, who went from moonshine runner to one of NASCAR's greatest drivers and owners. Don't miss NASCAR Hall of Fame biography, Junior Johnson, 10 p.m. Eastern, only on Speed.
You know, the people ask about Junior Johnson, and when you look at his entire body of work, he was a great driver, 50 wins. He was a great owner, 6 championships. I mean, just the things that he did as an owner and driver, but then also the contributions he made to the sport, bringing R.J. Reynolds into the sport at a time when that's really what turned everything around and turned it from a regional sport to a national sport. He's contributed an awful lot to this business.
And I think he played a huge role in going to Richard Childress in 1981 and said, you need to get out of that car and put that Earnhardt boy in that car.
True. Childress valued Junior's counsel very, very highly, as did most everyone in the sport.
And not because Richard couldn't drive a race car. There were sponsorship opportunities that went with it.
Right. We'll tell that story a little later on. Let's check with Matt.
Mike, 2005, Richmond winner Kurt Busch back in the garage, car up on jack stands, going back and forth to the conversation between he and Steve Addington. He just needs the car to rotate better earlier in the corner. He says once it settles in, the front tires just have less turn. They've already changed the left rear spring, and this team putting a lot of effort in their short track program. He finished 3rd at Bristol, but they went to Gresham Motorsports Park to work a little more, fine-tune the short track program, because as I said, you've got to be good here in May, because you never know where you'll be in points when you come back in September to try to lock yourself in for the chase.
You know, Larry, I think if we went back to Phoenix, I recall people complaining about tire chatter at Phoenix. And this is the same tire we had there. So there's something this tire likes or needs that these guys maybe haven't found.
You're right. Yeah, we heard that same thing.
It just feels awful. It doesn't. It goes in the corner, pitches over on the right front, gets loose, then it settles and shoves the nose, and then it's loose off.
And that about covers it.
I think you can fix that pretty easy. Just jack it up and start all over.
David is 26th on the speed chart. And Marcus Ambrose, his not quite teammate, because I guess we can't stress enough that while this car, I guess it's like the Stewart-Haas relationship with Hendrick, except Jody and Ted Geschechter and Brad Doherty's are the owners of this 47, except I guess the difference is isn't this car pretty much supplied technology and chassis and engines and all by Michael Waltrip Racing, but it's not run out of that same shop, is it?
Yeah, it is.
It is out of the same shop.
It is in the same shop now.
Yeah. They're all under the same umbrella.
Got it.
It's a technical alliance. Michael and them supply these guys with all the engineering help they need, just like they do their own teams, build the cars for them, prep the cars there in the shop with Frankie Kerr, the crew chief.
Right.
But it comes out of the same building.
That's right. I've forgotten they'd moved.
Yeah, they
Jody
moved over.
Ted had moved into Michael's shop along with Martin Truex car and David Rudiman.
And we're looking at Martin Truex Jr. right now in the garage area, but going back to Marcos Ambrose, I read this week where they somewhat sat down amongst themselves. They felt like they are absolutely suffering the sophomore slump. And Marcos said, you know what, maybe we are trying too hard. Maybe we're expecting too much. Let's kind of take a little different approach as we move forward from this weekend on. That was Ryan Truex, Martin Truex Jr.'s brother, that had his head stuck in the window there.
Little brother, and he's driving a car for Michael and those guys in the, what do they call it, camping?
K&N Filters
K&N Filters,
East Series.
Won the championship last year, Ryan did.
There's a retro. There's that retro ride.
That thing is cool looking. And the number, I mean, that's the Junior Johnson car. I mean, when you look at that number, that's the way Junior would have put 9 on the car, because he liked everything simple. He wanted, when we were 11, if you ever look at number 11, it's just a couple of marks on the side of it.
The only thing that's missing off the side of it, the Colonel, Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Yeah, that's right. We did have that. Somebody had to pay for the food. We had the rest of it covered.
And we'll be back to the future after this. Sunday, a storm brews in the open plains as the world's toughest trucks head to America's heartland. After a long break, they're itching for some beating and banging. It's the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series live from Kansas. Sunday at 12:30 Eastern, only on Speed. Now there's a paint scheme. Looks just like the box it came in. Elliott Sadler in the Reynolds wrap. Number 19 Ford.
You know, we talked about it being a home game to some degree for Denny Hamlin. I'd say this is absolutely a home game for Elliott Sadler. Of course, he's even back living in Emporia, Virginia, just down the road here from Richmond International Raceway.
Larry, I watched these guys. We had a shot here coming down the back straightaway and even going down pit road. Looks like they got the cars yawed out of skosh here. You know, pick up that extra downforce as they sling off into these corners here. You can see, you'll notice that right rear is hanging out there just a little bit when they come down the straight and get to the corner. The rear end gets there almost quicker than the front does.
Trying to get that air on that right rear corner of that spoiler.
Yeah.
All right, how do you do that, Larry? How do you configure the car to make that happen?
You actually do it with the way the rear end housing is configured. You basically have the wheels pointed outward, and that's going to make it run down the racetrack that way. Used to do it by simply moving what we called an eccentric on the trailing arms. We could put rear steer in it, but now they actually build it into the housing itself. I know at Phoenix we saw a lot of guys changing housings during practice, because that's something that could be a little different with this car now with the rear spoiler versus when we had the wing on it.
Look at Paul Menard, who's 29th on the board as we go to Matt.
Mike, Rodney Childers, and David Runeman deep in thought, going back and forth on what to try next in this double zero, struggling, trying to get grip on both ends of the race car. There's absolutely no grip out there, very slick. But they had an interesting week at the shop. They've actually, since the shop is more like, you know, such an amusement park, they actually had a Mardi Gras theme. The Hopewell High School prom took place at Michael Waltrip Racing. Had a great time. But David said he remembers his prom. I asked him what kind of car. Mike, you would appreciate this. He borrowed his uncle's canary yellow Corvette.
Yeah, I mean, Michael Waltrip Racing is an unbelievable place. I mean, it used to be a multi-cinema theater.
And roller rink.
Yes, and that's not the first time that they've actually had a prom there, and they've even had a wedding there. And they'll do this a lot on the weekends when the shop is kind of laying dormant.
So when you come to Charlotte for the Sprint All-Star race and the Coke 600, just go by 77 to exit 28, and you can visit Michael Waltrip Racing. A lot of the race shops will be open during that 10 days, and they love to have fans come by and, you know, take the tour, look in on what's going on, and stop by the souvenir store before you leave.
A lot of cool displays.
Yeah.
A lot of some interactive stuff, some obviously footage from some of the wins that Michael's had at Daytona and Talladega, and it is fun to go there.
David Stremme, the Air National Guard number 26, is 35th on the speed chart.
Run a total of 16 laps right now. The most laps has been by Kyle Busch, who's run 30 laps.
Guy's pretty happy right now. Jamie McMurray sitting top of the chart here at a 22:04.
Dick Berggren.
Jamie McMurray did set that lap, which is quickest, early on in this practice session, came in shortly after that, and they have been working on the brakes on his race car ever since. They've got mechanics on all four corners, and they have been bleeding the brakes. They had a bit of a leak. They want to make sure that there is absolutely no air in the lines. Richmond is a very heavy braking track. The stat of the week that I was astonished to find is McMurray has never led a lap here.
But you know, Dick, you mentioned the brakes, and we talked about that a lot at Phoenix. You know, you would think going to Martinsville, that's what you think about, brakes, 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 and rightly so. But at Martinsville, when you roll out of the throttle, you have a very low 650 gear that slows you down. Here, it's a very high gear. It's a 514 gear. This place can be as hard on brakes as anywhere we go.
We're giving you a look at Joe Nemechek because those Goodyear tires have not rolled since this practice started. There are 46 cars here trying to qualify for tomorrow night's race, and Joe is the only one of those to have not yet turned a lap of practice.
Don't need no stinking practice.
Don't need no stinking tires.
Practice? Just practice.
What the man say? Tires don't mean nothing.
Plan your day around the television right here on Speed. NASCAR Live follows us at 1:30. Then you'll see Sprint Cup final practice because this is an impound race. NASCAR Live at 3:30. Nationwide qualifying airs right here on Speed at 4 o'clock, followed by Sprint Cup qualifying. And to get your trackside fix, you're going to have to stay up till 11 tonight.
It'll be worth it.
Casey Kane. And then tomorrow, Crown Royal presents the Heath Calhoun 400. They started doing this Your Name Here program a few years ago, and they found it a great way to honor servicemen. Staff Sergeant Heath Calhoun is the honoree this year at Richmond.
Yeah, during her tour of duty, he lost both of his legs in an explosion. But what's very cool is he just recently competed with the U.S. Paralympic team in alpine skiing.
Wow.
A very extraordinary individual.
When we visit Walter Reed, usually annually, NASCAR goes up there for a NASCAR day. Unbelievable. First of all, unbelievable the attitude of the men and women that are at the hospital. The other thing that's unbelievable is the technology and how advanced it has become as far as with prosthetics and all the things that these guys are able to have to use. Is pretty incredible to look at and watch. And the training they go to, you know, it's not as simple as a lot of the stuff is computerized. Even you got you know, like if you have I'm sure with the Heath there, you got to learn to walk with those prosthetics, and they're helped, aided by computer technology.
Wow.
Pretty cool.
Another new paint scheme. This one for Scott's Easy Seed on Carl Edwards' car. I guess now that we've fertilized everything, now we got to seed those bare spots. So there you go.
I know you've got a line, DW, so go ahead.
You think he'll be mowing them down tomorrow night?
Our producer Barry Landis, between bites of lunch, said he's just trying to take root in the top 12.
It says it'll grow anywhere, but I bet it won't grow under his feet.
Guaranteed, even.
Now that's a good line. That's good. I like that.
Oh well.
Right now,
it is practice, and we do need stinking practice.
And believe me, if there's a pun, we'll find it.
That's right.
Carl has run a total of 25 laps. Right now, he's 19th quickest.
NASCAR Day coming up. You got your pin on? Got your pin yet?
I got my pin on. Larry, where's your pins?
I've got it right here. Got to dig it out.
Mark Martin, 9th quickest, as reported at the top of this show.
Oops.
And elsewhere, Alan Gustafson signing a 4-year extension to his deal with Hendrick Motorsports. Certainly good news for Mark, who has said he plans to stay in this 5 for the remainder of his contract, which runs through 2011.
HendrickCars.com. If you're looking for a car, I think they got like, I don't know how many thousands of cars you can look at on that website. Pretty cool.
Mark will be making his 49th start here at Richmond. He has the 1 win back in February of 1990. I'm sure one Mark likes to remember, but would love to forget because they had the penalty, took some points away. Over the height of the intake manifold spacer, they took some points away, and the number of points that they took away from that 6 car of Jack Roush was greater than what he lost the championship by that year.
Larry, if I recall that infraction, the question was the spacer was the correct height, and I believe the problem was it was not a discrete part. They had welded it to the manifold, and NASCAR said no, that's not what the rule intends.
You can bolt it on, you just couldn't weld it.
Yeah, there was back in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, there was a lot of discrepancies about intake manifold height, a restrictor plate racing and non-restrictor plate racing, and there's no question that did not make a difference in Mark Martin's day at Richmond that day, but you know what, the rules were the rules.
AJ has been the fastest Ford since they dropped the green flag in this practice session. That's now that's sort of a modern retro paint scheme. It's another old Mark Martin paint scheme right there.
Yeah, I like that. It's
well, we keep referencing Phoenix. Who sat on the pole at Phoenix about a month ago? AJ Allmendinger.
So, you know, I see a lot of Mark Martin and AJ I think AJ's got a much more playful nature than Mark tends to show, but you talk about grit and determination, and I'm going to be here and I'm going to make it. That's AJ Allmendinger every bit as much as it was Mark Martin.
And he's not locked in for next year. I mean, he's still got, you know, they got to work out something with him as far as is he going to stay in that 43 car or not.
Reed Sorensen is one of the drivers who must qualify on time. This is Braun Racing's entry, coming here unsponsored. And he is one of those drivers who must make the field on time, and we're going to send 3 home. The blank on Joe Nemechek's position is because Joe has not turned a lap of practice yet. And in fact, Joe just climbed over the car to look in the window net. Is he climbing aboard? Maybe.
Yes, he's getting in.
Okay.
It's not chattering as much. Loose off pretty bad.
Here's a driver, Reed Sorensen. Had a great start to his career, came up through Legends racing against David Reagan and Joe, you know, and those kids, and got himself into the Cup Series at a very young age. And now he's kind of drifted back into the Nationwide Series and makes an occasional Cup start. Larry, what does this young driver from Georgia need to do to rebuild his career and get back up into a top-tier ride?
Well, the first thing I'd like to say is I think maybe he got moved a year too quick. I think another year in the Nationwide Series for Reed Sorensen would have been much better for his career. But I think the biggest thing is be competitive in that Nationwide Series garage. Win some races, and he normally is. And then whenever you can come here to the Sprint Cup Series garage, whether it's a one-off race in a competitive race car, climb in it and do it. But I think being successful in the Nationwide Series will do more for him and his confidence as well.
Well, he had a great run at Nashville, finishing second. And oh, by the way, here at Richmond, he is fastest in nationwide practice.
Dave Marcus. No, that's not Dave Marcus.
We're not quite that retro today. That is.
It does look a lot like it, though, doesn't it?
It does kind of look like Marcus's old 71.
Oh, wing tips.
Yeah. Bobby Labonte aboard for TRG. And Bobby 41st in this session so far. Get your wing tips and get your pin on. NASCAR Race Hub on Speed catches you up on all of the day-to-day doings in your favorite sport, Monday through Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. New driver for Tommy Baldwin this week, Casey Mears, relieved of his duties as standby driver for Denny Hamlin at Joe Gibbs Racing. Was free to sign with Tommy Baldwin, and hopefully they can find their way into races. They've had a little trouble qualifying for races lately.
Now, Johnny Sauter didn't really get relieved of his duties driving this car. He was only there for 2 races because he has to go back and run the Camping World Truck Series. Of course, that race is at Kansas this Sunday on Speed, so that's the reason Johnny couldn't keep driving it.
And Larry, you know, you hear these guys complain about tire chatter. Well, how you what that is most likely lack of camber. And what camber is, it will show you our animation here. Let me pull my front end off. There you go. That camber at negative, that's when you lean the tire in as far as you can at the top. I think there's a rule about 8 degrees if I'm correct. But Larry, that's what's causing it. How do you fix it? What do you do to fix it?
Well, what we're going to have to do is come into the garage area. We're going to have to raise the hood, and we're going to look down in the right front. And there's a spacer that goes between the actual A-arm and the mounting plate of the A-arm, and we slide whatever we want to lean that in. And now we always run negative in the left front, or in the right front, just like what we're looking at right there. But we run opposite in the left front. We'll lean it out at the top, which is positive camber.
So that's the adjustment that when you hear a guy talking about tire chatter, most likely that's the area you're going to find the teams working in, where that magic number is. 8 degrees is maximum, but it may be too much camber. You may have to take some out.
And just remember, the number we're looking at, whether if it is 8 degrees, that's a static number. Just think about how much more it's going to be when that car travels. That's what you really have to work with, and you really have to figure on, which is where the engineers and all the simulation programs these teams do comes in.
Yeah, because normally when the car travels down, it's going to suck that tire in even more. So if you're 8 static, heck, you might be 10 or 12 in the middle of the corner.
Yeah, when the car goes into the corner and the springs compress, the suspension travels And because without trying to get too deep into it, the upper A-frame is not as long as the lower A-frame. You get camber gain when that car goes into the corner. And the best thing the teams can do when the car comes in is take the temperature across the tire in 3 different locations, the outer, the inner, and the center of the tread. And that gives them a pretty good idea of whether that corner is operating to maximum efficiency, which would be when the tire's flat across and all of that tread is working when you're in the corner.
Yeah, and later, boys and girls, we're going to explain Ackerman.
And we might even do a battery animation.
Don't want to go there.
Poor Sid Ackerman. There is a guy named Ackerman. I don't think his name is Sid.
I don't think it is either.
Slob will look it up for us. Ackerman. No, I'm not going there.
No, it's not time right now.
He designed the steering geometry that's found on many of these cars.
Yeah.
Way back.
You know, we're looking at Jeff Gordon here. He is 6th quickest. And his record at this racetrack, he has the 2 wins in 34 starts, but 22 top 10s. But I was looking this morning, we have 3 true short tracks still on our schedule. We have the 2 races at Bristol, we have the 2 at Martinsville, and we have the 2 here. At those 3 current short tracks, Jeff Gordon in 2014, they've got 104 starts, 14 wins, 71 top 10 finishes, and they've led over 6,500 laps at those 3 racetracks.
Well, I just want to note that look who's 7th. His team.
Jimmy Johnson.
Jimmy Johnson. You know, you don't have to. I told the people in the media, so you don't have to wreck a guy to get even with him. You just kind of worry him to death. Look, always want him to look over his shoulder and see you.
Dick Berggren.
Well, Joey Logano has been in the garage and out on the racetrack multiple times this morning, and the conversations he is having with his crew chief, Greg Zipadelli, have improved the performance of his race car every single time. It's interesting listening to Zippy talk to his driver and trying to get more information from him about the behavior of the car. He'll ask him a question, then he'll remain silent for a couple of minutes, let Joey sort of think things over, and then he'll ask yet another question. The car is very close to being about as good as a race car can be here at Richmond. Just a little bit looser in the center of the corner is all they need. Last time in, they changed a couple of front shock absorbers and made a right front suspension adjustment.
You know what's interesting, Mike, you talked about getting tire temperatures. If you see the gentleman there with Alcon, the brake company, what he's doing is getting brake temperatures, and he's got a long probe on that, and he's sticking it in there and checking the rotor temperature. These rotors here will see temperatures up to 12 to 1,300 degrees Fahrenheit. So you can also tell a lot about the balance of the car, not only from the tire temperatures, but from the rotor temperatures front and rear.
Matt?
Mike, Jeff Gordon's back in the garage here, complaining like a lot of other guys up and down the line here in the garage. The track is just slick, trying to find grip all over this racetrack. And to put a period on Dr. Dick Berggren's story about Joey Logano, that 20 car, so impressive. It impressed the 24 of Gordon. He was talking to Steve Letarte, want to know how many laps Joey had on his tires because his car looks so stellar on the racetrack.
Today, Willie Nelson is 77. Elliott Sadler is 35. Michael Waltrip is 47 today. Tomorrow, NASCAR on Fox brings you Sprint Cup Series racing. Kyle Busch tries to defend his title and take home the checkered flag for the 2nd straight year, as coverage from Richmond International Raceway begins tomorrow night at 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific in high definition on Fox.
It's hard to believe it'll be our last short track race for NASCAR on Fox.
A little bit of slip sliding off the corner there. Turn 2.
That's a tricky corner over there. You almost need more racetrack over there. You run out of racetrack in a hurry.
Yeah, you have to crank the wheel so hard left that when you come up out of that corner under power, that's when you get the back end jumping out from under. But look at all that rubber and debris that's building up out of the groove right there. Man, if you get on that, if you get that on your tires, it's like hitting ice.
All right, now stay with me on this one.
Okay.
Robert Fulton did not invent the steamboat, but he got all the credit. The steamboat was invented by John Fitch, out of Windsor, Connecticut on the Connecticut River, but Fitch went broke. Fulton ended up with all the money and all the notoriety. Ackerman steering was invented by a carriage builder named Lankensperger in 1817 in Germany, but it was patented in England by Rudolf Ackerman in 1818 as a steering mechanism for horse-drawn carriages, and it's used in automobiles to this day. So Ackerman got the credit, but he didn't invent it.
You know the moral of that story? If you got a good idea, patent it.
You're right. Well, Fitch had the patents, but when he went broke, Fulton went to the courts and with lawyers, guns, and money, got the right to build steamboats and made a fortune, and he's in history.
How about that?
Poor John Fitch died penniless.
And you know, we look at Ackerman on these race cars, and in simple form, it's how much, when you turn the steering wheel, how much the left front turns versus the right front, and how you can change that is the location fore and aft of the tie rods where they bolt into the steering arm. And a lot has to do with what tire you're running as to what it seems like what the car likes for Ackerman.
Yeah, when we talk about stagger, the difference between the right rear and the left rear tire, because the right rear travels further than the left rear. Well, when you talk about the front of the car, the left front turns more than the right front does, or at least theoretically you'd like for it to. That's why you adjust the Ackerman.
And one time at band camp,
oh come on, this is compelling, interesting.
Me and my friend Rudy, who invented the steamboat. You don't happen to know when his birthday is, do you?
I believe John Fitch was born about 1616. I'll put my best man on it. As soon as he gets here, I'll put my best man on it. Say hi to Heath Calhoun, Staff Sergeant. He will give the command to fire engines up here. His phone is ringing because he's on television. Gosh, they tell me that doesn't ever happen. But
wave
Crown
to
Royal
us, Heath. Wave to us.
Presents the Heath Calhoun 400 here tomorrow night, live on Fox. When they started this promotion, a lot of folks, Crown Royal wanted folks to write in with a crown-worthy moment. And they had tons of entries, but it turned out a lot of them were about servicemen. And that's how this competition has pretty much evolved. And it's a great promotion. And he's having a lot of fun here at the racetrack this weekend.
I mean, that has to be so cool for him to have a race named after you.
Dick?
With Tony Stewart. Tony, all the practice here for the race at Richmond is being held during the heat of the day with a bright sun. The race is going to be, well, under darkness when it's going to be a lot cooler. How do you interpolate what you learned today to what you're going to need tomorrow?
You just work on balance. It's you know that when it cools down tomorrow night, we're going to gain some grip, but it really doesn't seem like it changes the balance of the car here. So you're strictly working on balance and just trying to get it consistent to where it's doing the same thing every lap, and then you'll just pick up speed tomorrow night. So this place isn't one of those tracks that really changes balance-wise, where in the heat of the day it's really, really loose, and then it gets really tight at night. Pretty much whatever you have during the day here is what you're going to have at night. You're just going to go quicker when it cools off.
How's the balance in your car?
We're working on it. I'm tight in the center and loose off, so I would feel a lot better if I could get the tie down with the center right now.
Okay, thank you, Tony.
And a lot of times here, Daryl's talked about it a lot, when you finally get that thing to turn a lot better through the middle, because you don't have the wheel turn so much, you'll actually calm that looseness down. I don't know that you can ever have too much forward bite or rear grip under acceleration off the corner here.
Yeah, when you've got so much wheel in the car, so much to the left, right in the middle of the corner, you say you're tight in the middle, so you've got to really crank on it in the middle of the corner. When you jump in the throttle, the front of the car gripping, and because the front of the car starts to grip, then the back of the car wants to snap out, and that's why you'll see what we call push loose. And we say this many, many times, say it again, fix what the driver complains about first, and that will fix both problems. If he said, I'm really, really loose, that's what you want to work on. But if I'm pushing loose, get the push out of it, and you won't be loose anymore.
Take a look at how times have slowed since this session began 1 hour ago. Dale Jr. has the 4th quickest lap of 22:13. His most recent laps have been up in the 22:90s, and right now nobody on track is running any quicker than that. So times have dropped off 8 or 9 tenths of a second since the quick times were put up at the start of this session.
And I think it's a combination of a couple of things. One, we know the track has heated up substantially even since this practice started, but I don't know that with a 30-minute break coming here in about 25 minutes and in another hour-and-a-half practice, that a lot of teams right now are throwing a lot of fresh tires. They're probably staying on the same old tires for the most part.
Yeah, I think in this session you just try same tires, run the car almost out of fuel to get that kind of feel, what it's like when it's out of fuel.
Now Jimmie Johnson, who's 7th on the board, ran his quickest lap on his 4th lap. Everybody else, it was either their 1st, 2nd, or 3rd lap was their quickest. Sprint brings you an inside look at what's happening now inside the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series. Jimmie Johnson is the point standing leader at 13:23. For more NASCAR stats, in-car audio, and live race radio, check out NASCAR Sprint Cup Mobile at sprint.com/speed.
Here's a car we might even want to keep an eye on a little bit later on this afternoon when we go to qualify. Sam Hornish Jr. in the 77 car. Right now he's 24th quickest, and he's actually been running this 24 car down. Remember, at Phoenix, qualified up in the top 3 or 4. And if you go back to last year, Sam had top 10 finishes in both races here in 2009.
I believe, Larry, I read that Roger Penske indicated that Sam Hornish will be back in Sprint Cup racing in 2011. That's good news. They will be hunting for a sponsor because with the Pennzoil deal coming over to Penske, the Mobil 1 deal goes away.
And Sam's one of those drivers. We're running around here in about 22 seconds right now. Sam has probably been around this racetrack. How fast do the IRL cars run here? Maybe in the 14-15 second bracket.
Incredible. They put on a great race here.
And it's interesting you mentioned that, because think about the places where he has run really well in these Sprint Cup cars.
Must seem like slow motion to him
yeah.
to go around here in a Cup car, but of course you're pretty busy in a Cup car. Same for Montoya.
Yeah, he thinks that back straightaway. So, man, when they lengthen that back straightaway.
Right. Juan is 18th right now. And again, all of these times, with the possible exception of Robbie Gordon and David Reagan, were put up in the first couple of laps of practice.
And as far as laps run in this practice session, Kyle Busch has run 61 laps. We just talked about Sam Hornish Jr. He's run the second most at 51 laps.
Cano's got 41 in. Jeff Gordon's got 48, and that's a lot for him.
This track, when it was a half mile, was quite flat. And even looking at it today as a 3/4 mile, it looks flatter than it is. There's 14 degrees of banking here, which is, for a short track, that's pretty sporty.
You won't believe this, but if you had an aerial overhead, if you look at the back straightaway and you look at pit road, that's the old racetrack.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
That's right. That was the half mile.
That's what we used to race on, and then they added, expanded it out for the 3/4 mile, made a D-shaped tri-oval here. The other thing that catches my attention, and has every time we come here recently, is remember at Talladega, where the start-finish line is there. If you don't, it's because you've never driven there, because every driver knows at Talladega that line is all the way down toward turn 1. Well, here, Larry, this start-finish line is closer, at least it appears to me like, much closer to turn 4 than it is turn 1.
It's not in the middle of the front straightaway by no means. It definitely favors the turn 4 side just a little bit.
Yeah, see, here it is way back here, and you can see you come off turn 4, and there you are. And a long way.
That would be somewhere about the middle, somewhere in that neighborhood right there. So yeah, it's well before what would be the middle of the front straightaway. But what I love about this track, it's small enough we call it a short track, but it's the perfect size track, especially for 43 race cars. And Mike, you mentioned the banking 14 degrees. That's the thing we'll see tomorrow night. We'll see them running all over different grooves in the corners.
And each other, by the way.
Welcome back to Richmond. A look down the front straightaway. from, is that Joey Logano's car?
That's
We'll find
looking.
out in a minute.
That's off to the side there. We're not going to see a whole lot until we get into competition.
Oh, yes.
And then we're going to see a lot of people banging into that camera, I'm afraid. It's on the left side of the car.
That definitely will give us some great shots tomorrow night, no question.
Always, I've used this before, but people always said on a short track, if the left side of your car is all beat up, you're in the way. If the right side of your car is all beat up, you've been passing people.
You've been doing the right thing.
We were talking about why the start-finish line here is offset toward turn 4. And the best recollection we can come up with is because they were still operating the track from the old control tower as they were building this one alongside it and a little further back to accommodate the track expansion. And I guess we'll have to do a little bit of further research.
Yeah, well, you would think that based on, you know, once everything kind of shook out, that they'd put that line down there in the middle of the trial oval, but.
Well, it does make it a little different.
I guess a little difference, not always bad.
Dick?
Well, Ryan Newman got the hang of this place real quick, Mike. In his first 4 starts here at Richmond, he rolled off a pair of seconds, a win, and the only race that didn't finish in the first 2 positions, he burnt a rear end down on the racetrack while he was running in the lead. Today they have made forward progress with the car. It is getting better and better. A few moments ago he came in, however, and the back brakes were absolutely smoking. He was using so much back brake. Right now they're putting 4 fresh tires on it, so we're going to see his lap times pick up. Matt?
Dick, every time a car goes by, we're seeing more and more at this time of practice going out with sticker tires. It'd be interesting to see what the lap times show. Jeff Gordon's out on brand new tires. Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex Jr., and Jimmy Johnson, the 48. Johnson says the car is really starting to come in. It's starting to think about turning, he says, but it's not quite there yet. Chad Knaus made a track bar adjustment. We'll see how that change makes the race car react.
Well, Matt, what the lap times show is that the track continues to slow down. Everybody is right around the 23-second mark, whereas the quickest laps of the day were in the teens and the 20s.
You know, we talk about Ryan Newman's rear brake smoking, being really hot. It fascinates me today that these guys use so much rear brake to help turn these race cars. Back in the day, that was a crutch. If you had a car that wouldn't turn and you had to dial rear brake into it, you had a messed up race car. And all you were doing was just trying to put a Band-Aid on the car that wasn't handling good. These guys have gotten so good at it that they actually use it as a tuning tool. And I'm sure he's just trying to see how much rear he can dial into that thing and get away with without spinning it out.
And you know, a lot of times what these guys will do is when you put fresh tires on, you fill it up with fuel, and the car's going to be a little bit on the free or loose side. You'll crank the front brake back in it. And then as you burn the fuel off and you start to get some laps on your tires and the car will start to push more and more, shove the nose, you'll start cranking a little rear brake, and then when you make
way too tight.
Make that pit stop, you'll crank it back to the front.
His car is tight.
Monday night, 9:30. You'll hear all about Max Pappas's most recent race right here on Speed.
Well, we hope we hear about it because he's going to have to find some speed, Mike. When you look right now, I know this is just practice, but the 3 go-homers that would be in trouble would be Max Pappas, Terry Cook, and Tony Raines in the 64 car.
Those are the drivers who must qualify on time based on their practice speeds. Michael McDowell the quickest. Casey Mears and Mike Bliss would be safe the way things are right now. More on braking from Matt.
And Mike, the garages here at Richmond are a little tight, so all the tire guys for all the teams have their tires all lined up directly across from where their car is pitted in the garage area. Now here, these are some of the tires that came off Kurt Busch's number 2. This is the right front. We're talking about how much brake dust these guys are using. A great shot. You see just how much front brake they're using here at Richmond.
And that tells a lot. That tells the crew chief, the engineers, exactly how much brake they're using. That'll tell you a lot when you change tires on a pit stop tomorrow night, too.
I see that on the front of my wife's car all the time. I didn't know that's what that was.
We're all married to the same woman, just different names.
Daryl, you know those black helicopters you're always claimed to be seeing? That's an AWACS plane. That's what tracks all those black helicopters.
You mean they can track a black helicopter? Something else to worry about.
Track pretty much anything.
It's quite the piece of equipment right there.
That must be NASCAR's then.
It could be. David Reagan had quite a day at Talladega. Going into that race, you might not have picked him to be the highest finishing Roush Fenway car, but I imagine he messed up more than a few of our DirecTV head-to-head brackets last Sunday.
But you know, when you think about it, he's always ran well at the restrictor plate tracks. His rookie season back in 2007 finished 5th in the Daytona 500. I think he finished 6th in the 500 a year or two ago. So restrictor plate racing has definitely been his forte since he came onto the circuit.
Got a nationwide win at Talladega
last year.
Searching for speed here, though. He is 36th on the chart. Everybody has now practiced. All 46 cars have been on the track for at least a couple of laps.
You know, all the things that you don't really worry about at Talladega are all the things that you have to worry about here. You know, like Dale Jr. said, tires don't mean nothing to me. Here they mean everything to you. Handling at Talladega doesn't mean a whole lot to you. Most everybody's car is going to work good enough to keep up in the draft. Here, if you don't have the handle, you're going to get lapped. So everything that's happened last week that wasn't that important, magnify how important it is here.
You know, the only thing I can think of that'll be relative between the two, we've seen it all year long, I think it'll come late in the race, will be strategy on pit road, weighing out track position, 4 tires, 2 tires, what do we do?
Yep, I agree.
Brad Keselowski, 20th right now, and he figures large in the new Penske alignment for 2011. He will move over to the Blue Deuce, which will retain Miller with Keselowski as the new driver.
And he's our nationwide series points leader, won the race at Talladega. Now there was a penalty after that race to do with spring and shock. There was even a point penalty, but even after the point penalty, he's still the points leader over there in that series.
And just remember, folks at home, you know, you say, oh, we're a bunch of cheaters. When that car went through inspection to start that race, everything on it was perfect. There was nothing wrong with the car. Everything met all the specs. It raced 300 miles on a racetrack that's going to put a lot of stress and strain on the parts and pieces of that car. A spring, if you oscillate that spring enough times, sometimes they give up a little bit or collapse a little bit. So knowing that anything can happen to these cars in the course of a race, that's why they have post-race inspection.
David Gilliland, 35th right now, going out for his 5th run. He has 20 laps on the Taco Bell Ford so far.
And he'll be one of the cars that will have to qualify on time a little bit later on this afternoon.
That's quite a battle right there at the end of the top 35 between Gilliland and Robbie Gordon, and there's some others involved there, but it really is nip and tuck every week.
Yeah, one week Robbie's in, next week he's out.
And just look at that. 2 points is the difference between having to worry about making this race or definitely locked in and racing. And you know, while we're on the subject of points, Mike, it's unbelievable after Talladega that 31 of the top 33 in the points changed positions. The only ones that did not change was Jimmy Johnson, the points leader, and Greg Biffle, who's 3rd in the points. Everyone else changed spots.
Here is Robbie Gordon. Robbie will be in the race tomorrow night. Doesn't have to worry about qualifying. A couple of music artists on the hood there. And BAM VIP. Robbie and BAM Racing, if you remember the 49 car, have an alliance for it this season. James Otto and Whitney Duncan depicted on the hood there.
Right now, Robbie is 28th quickest. He's run a total of 37 laps, and going back to Phoenix, we keep referencing back to that. Had a good run at Phoenix all night long there a few weeks ago.
Wonder if he brought all the fire, you know, help out here to Richmond that he took to Phoenix. So they had a pretty sporty little group out there.
Gene Need's in Kansas with the truck series.
Two-minute warning coming up on this practice session. Not that there is such a thing, it just, you know, it sounded right.
Yeah.
So it's an hour-and-a-half practice, 2 minutes to go. They'll take a 30-minute break. We'll go over to Steve Burns and NASCAR Live for that 30 minutes, and then we'll be right back here with final practice for the Sprint Cup Series. This being an impound race, final practice precedes qualifying.
Yeah, in really, I guess impound is not the complete appropriate term. It's just there's no practice after qualifying. NASCAR's doing this more and more on the two-day shows, so that's the reason in these 2 hour-and-a-half practice session, a lot of agendas. You're trying to get your car ready to race. You're trying to get your car ready to qualify. They can work on the cars after qualifying. They just won't see the track again until the green flag drops.
I kind of like that because, you know, after qualifying so many times you say, man, I wish I could have done this. I wish I could have done that, or I need to change that, whatever, and that really gives you an opportunity to work on it, get her tuned up, and be good for the race.
Well, who I like this for are those go or go homers, because when you have a true impound like we had at Talladega, they are absolutely forced to pretty much, you know, race what they have to qualify, and of course they're going to do everything they can to qualify just to make the race. So I like this format, I think, better than the true impound at a racetrack like this.
Dave Blaney has made only 3 laps in this practice session. Joe Nemechek made 2, so they are good to go to get ready to qualify. We'll see if they decide to run the second session, and then you will see qualifying right here on Speed later on this afternoon. Travis Kvapil, 36th. He is locked into the show. 40th quickest on Speed as he wags the tail there off the corner.
Tell you what, that old 34 car was right up there near the front of the pack most of the day at Talladega last week.
The 64 is Tony Raines. He is not locked in, and that right now, based on the 10 laps he's run in practice, is the car most at risk of missing the show. Little Joe's auto.
Yeah, I remember that from
Little Joe Falk.
Yeah, I remember that from back in the day.
Right. He sponsored cars at Richmond for a long time. Involved in racing.
This is the first time the 64 has been to the track this year. You know, they ran a limited schedule last year. Car owned by Larry Gunzelman. Todd Bodine drove the car a little bit last year. So they've decided to break it out here for a little short track racing at Richmond.
Well, you can see that big old fin. Look at that thing.
So there's Tony Raines, Reed Sorensen, Terry Cook, Dave Blaney, Michael McDowell, Joe Nemechek. But because the garage area wouldn't hold all those cars, those fellows have to pit their cars along pit road during these practice sessions.
Boy, Mike, that's something we don't see very often. Those times that were posted early, that nobody ever got any better. The times are all pretty much the same from the first 10 or 15 anyway.
Jay McMurray is the quickest at 22:04. Right now, Max Pappas would miss the show at a 22:65. Tight.
Not much difference. The 3 most at risk going into the second practice are Max Pappas, Terry Cook, and Tony Raines. We'll have round 2 of practice for you in about half an hour. Right now, let's go over to the Speed stage and NASCAR Live with Steve Burns.